Thank you very much. Welcome. I believe others will join us as we proceed. I believe so. I
No
believe
problem.
others will join us as we proceed. Some people are already online. So thank you. I welcome everyone that has joined this conversation already. Thank you for being part of this. It's a very big concern in my heart. Um, we need to pay more attention to men. We need to cater to their needs. We need to fill the gaps, that are very, very, impactful on their personal lives and the society at large. And this is the reason we're having these conversations. And I realize that most men actually recognize they have gaps in their lives. The only issue is they cannot profile and deal with those gaps, properly. So, like someone would say, if you before you start, thinking about the solution to your problem, first give your problem a name. When you know the name of your problem, it is easier, to provide solutions to it. So I know most men know there is a gap somewhere, but they don't know what name to call it, and so they find it very difficult, to be able to prefer solutions to it. So this is what our conversation is going to be around today. And I know Auntie Tolu is well loaded to, help us out a bit in this journey today. So I know Auntie Tolu, I've known her for a while, and I know when you are, thinking about something, you have an idea or you have a vision, or you are thinking about something in your heart and it's not crystallizing, it's not solid, they are in pieces, you cannot put them together. I recommend you just sit with Auntie Tolu for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. You will understand. You will understand the direction straight away. You know what has been be on your mind. So I know her as a coach. She coaches the head and the heart. So the journey between the head and the heart, she takes care of, of that journey. And I know she's been a wonderful blessing to me personally and a lot of others that I know. So thank you, Auntie Tolu, again for all you do, and thank you for joining us on this conversation. You're welcome. Okay, so let's just go straight to our conversation this evening.
Okay.
So we're talking about men actually, and I want to start by asking, do you have men in your life, and what are the relationship you have with those men in your life?
Okay. So thank you once again. Thank you very much for involving me in this conversation. And I just want to quickly say before I answer the questions that I'm answering from a woman's perspective.
Okay, that's
So
right.
I want us to have that at the back of our minds, while the discussion is going on.
Right.
I think every woman has men in her life. I'm not an exception to the rule. I will start with the first man of my life, which
Okay.
happens to be my father. So,
Okay.
like every other young lady or woman, we didn't drop on the earth by ourselves. We came through a source, and that
Yeah.
source is, father. So I do have a father. My
Mm.
relationship with my father is pleasant. It is. I love it. It
Wow.
is. It is. It is nurturing. Yes, that's the kind of relationship I have with my father. I
Wow.
have beloved husband. And let me tell you, I don't think I've told you this before, okay, but one of the things I was looking out for
Okay.
in my future husband will be some traits of my father.
Mm.
Yes,
Wow.
because I hold my father in such high esteem that I was looking out for traits of him in anybody I will eventually get married to, and I did find
Wow.
that man. So I would say my father created that first impression of what a man should be like, and I looked for it in the man I was going to marry, and I'm blessed with a very wonderful husband.
Wow, wow, wow.
And
So wait a minute, Auntie Tolu. So you are saying that if possible that your father could duplicate as your husband, wouldn't have sought any man like you would have settled with him.
Well, I so I've lived more of my life with my father, and I
Okay.
can testify and I can beat my chest and say my father is a good man.
Wow.
I
Wow.
think
Wow.
I don't know if it gets any better than my dad, but
Wow.
the hope is that at least my husband will be like my father.
Wow, wow, that is gold. That is gold. Very rare. I don't know how many people can pray to marry their father in this generation,
So
but I congratulate you. I felicitate with you on the blessings of the
fathers
father you
have
have. You said?
their first love. Our fathers are our first love.
Mm,
Whether
mm,
they are good or whether they are not very good,
mm,
daughters love their fathers, and
mm.
somehow we ultimately gravitate towards men that are like our father. I think.
Wow, wow, that's good. Okay, so you were talking about your husband, that your husband is another man in your life.
Yes, my husband is another man in my life. I thank God
Okay.
for him. He's a blessing. He's a blessing and inspiration.
Okay, I think you're frozen.
Again, the relationship is one that is sorry, a call just come through. So again, the relationship is one that is nurturing, and I'm so blessed, to be wife to such a man. Talking about other men, yes, we work with men, we talk with men, well, surrounded by men. I don't want to say it's a man's world, but yes, we live in a society where all the time interacting with men. So I have men who are friends, I have men who are colleagues, I have men who, they are acquaintances, I have men who are younger than I am that, are like, what will I call them now? Just men that, and I'm a minister in the King's Church. And so I
Okay.
have quite a lot of young guys also that I have to, talk to,
Okay.
cancel and stuff like that. Yeah, so my work is
Right. So thank you. I feel like you're surrounded by wonderful men across all ages. But okay, so if I may, considering these kinds of men around you, have you observed any gap, or what gaps have you observed in their lives, even as wonderful as they are to you?
okay. So I will say that one of the gaps that immediately begins to stand out
Mm,
as someone who so as someone who gives deep thoughts to things. One of the gaps that immediately stands out is that gap of um will I say the father gap?
the father gap.
Yes, it's the father of yes, the father gap. Um,
Mm,
you know, I see that a lot of what we have these days,
mm,
we don't have that intentional fathering of young.
mm, mm,
Yes, we have fathers who are around and
mm.
they do the fathering according to what they can, according to what they know. So it's
Okay.
not intentional, they're just being themselves, but
Mm,
even that is not standard. Unlike the women, from the time we are young, we
mm,
start learning about, this thing called being a woman, this thing called being a mother, this thing called being a wife. Where in
mhm,
a more intentional training, so to say,
mm,
into becoming a mother than the men have.
mm,
So the
mm,
initial gap I will certainly, point at will be that one of that father example for
mm.
young
So the father example you're saying is
is
a
lacking.
gap in men, lacking in men.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so can we move on? What other gaps have you noticed?
Okay, so another gap I would say is that, which, let me, it links to the first gap I mentioned, which is, that absence, the absence of a father figure, in the
Mm,
real essence of who a father is supposed to be to a young man. So the next
mm,
gap I'd like to, point out to that I have noticed is that gap of the how to. There is nobody showing, like women, we we have there the how to, how do I be a woman? We're
mm,
shown along the way, even if
mm,
it's from our toys or from the conversations we have with our mothers or when we're playing with our fellow girls.
mm,
Unconsciously or consciously, we are learning these how to's. But I realize
mm,
that when it comes to the men, there
mm,
isn't active um that active show on how to become a man. You tell
mm.
a man is supposed to be strong. How does a man become strong?
Oh,
Is it
oh.
do to become strong? You say a man is supposed to be brave. How is a man supposed to be brave? You say a man is
Mm,
supposed to be breadwinner, but who is showing him how to be a breadwinner?
mm,
What
mm,
other things they say men are supposed to be? Men are supposed to be, okay. You say a man is supposed to be a good husband. Who is
mhm,
showing him how to be a good husband?
mm,
A
mm,
man is supposed to be a good father, or who is showing him how to be a good father? So I think,
mm,
the second thing, if I'm picking, say, three things, I would say the
mm,
second thing, the second gap I see as a
mm,
result of the first gap, which is the lack of that father figure or that father training, is a lack.
mhm,
There's nobody showing the men how to
mhm.
become what the society expects from them.
But Auntie Tolu, whose responsibility is to show the how-tos? Is
So
it my own father or any man around?
So ideally, right, it ought to be the fathers. But
Mm,
let's now say that the father figure in the home is not ideal.
okay.
Let's say that we don't have an ideal situation for this, show on how to be a father. Let's now say that we don't have an ideal situation. It is the
Okay.
responsibility of any man around, any
Mhm,
man, young boy, any man around a young, maybe like a teenager, any
mhm,
man that's older than, a young guy or boy, a younger man. It is the
mm.
responsibility of men to show men.
Men to show is the responsibility of men to show men.
Yes.
But do these men also know how what to show
So
or how to show?
I feel like, I believe that, knowledge is in parts.
Mm,
There's nobody that knows everything. No man knows everything. But
mm,
let's say, for instance, you know how to, as a man, let's say you have mastered the art of managing your anger properly. If
okay.
it's a young teenage boy or a young boy that is around you, maybe your nephew, maybe your student, maybe someone, a child you go to church with, a neighbor, you have
Mm,
mastered how to, manage your anger as a man.
mhm,
You have learned how to control yourself from outbursts of anger that can lead to physical damage. That is
mhm,
what you know how to do in your own life.
mhm.
That is something you can hold on to and say, I know how to do this. Okay, why
Right.
don't you, the boy, why don't you teach that child, why don't you teach that teenager how to do the same? We might not
Mm,
know everything,
mm,
you
mm,
understand,
mm,
but the part that you know, please pass it on. So that
mm, mm,
collectively, imagine that, someone is teaching this young boy how to manage his anger. Someone is teaching this young boy how to succeed in school. Someone is teaching
mm,
young boy or how to make some money when he gets to some certain age. Another man
mhm,
along the journey of a young man's life is teaching him, being a good husband doesn't just happen automatically. This is what you need to
mhm,
know. what you need to do. So
Mhm.
imagine that collectively, you know that saying of how it's a village, a whole village that trains up a
Yes.
child. If
Yes.
we would inculcate that into the raising of our sons, I think it
Mhm.
will make a whole lot of difference.
Okay, so that is noted. Before I move to the next question, I would like to ask you: do you have any other gap you want to mention, please?
Yes, definitely. So another gap I would like to mention is I will call it a lack of emotional management.
Emotional management.
Yes, I will call it a lack of emotional management. I feel like men have not learned how to, because we just say all these things like, oh, a man is not supposed to cry. But what if he wants to cry? What if
Why should he cry? Is a man don't cry? Men don't cry now. I mean,
but I find that is almost absurd. Come
ah,
on, man should be allowed to cry. It's an emotion and it's a release.
then I don't think he's a man again. No, if he's crying,
So
men are
that,
supposed to be
that's the problem.
strong, not
That is
cry.
You see, that is the problem, because no matter who you are, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, if you keep on suppressing your feelings, you keep on suppressing your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, they will have the greater hand over you, over your common sense, and over right judgments.
Mm,
I cannot talk about how you're feeling as a man. Your
mm,
feelings are not you, but you should be allowed, and room should be made available for a man to discuss how he is feeling without the perception that this man is weak. Because
mm, mm,
what now happens is that the more you suppress those feelings, they have to be, in one way or the other, discharged into other things. And so
mm,
you begin to see things like, oh, men drinking, because they can't talk to anybody. So you see, oh, men drinking, men getting into different vices, the
mm,
escape routes. For
mm,
some, it could be anything, just looking for a
mm,
way of escape, because they
mm,
cannot show their emotions. There is nobody to talk to about what they are feeling and what they are going through. So
mm,
all these escape routes become tempting. Whether it's
mm,
now it goes into maybe violence,
mm,
um, pornography, sex addiction, and all
mm.
sorts of things at the end of the day, because you are supposed to be strong and you're not supposed to, as a man, talk about the way you're feeling. So for me,
Wow,
that's
wow.
huge. Men have not been made to understand that it's okay to feel what you are feeling. You are not your feelings. Your feelings are
Mm,
an indicator that things might be going wrong. Negative
mm,
emotions might just be a sign that things are going wrong.
mm,
It's just a
mm,
sign, not you. So it is okay for you to talk to somebody about what signal your mind, your emotions are giving you before you do something wrong.
mm, mm. Okay, so Auntie Tolu, thank you very much. I've learned about the fathering gap. I've learned about the out-to gap. I've learned about the emotional management gap. And I also noted something beautiful you mentioned, that it is the responsibility of men to show men. It is the responsibility of men to show men. Okay, so I would like to say this to our audience. If you have any contribution or any question you want to ask our guest this evening, please put it in the chat box so that I can attend to it. Please put your questions or your contributions or your observations, whatever you want to contribute, put it in the chat box. So, Auntie Tolu, we have about 10 minutes to go. So if I may ask you, do you think these gaps you've mentioned and maybe others, because of our time, you've not been able to mention, are contributing factors to the way our society is today? Now, this is the angle I am taking this from. When you go to the prison today, research shows that between the ages of 14 to 29, men are more than their other counterparts in prison. And it gives me concern when people talk about banditry. The first question I ask is, who are the perpetrators, you will discover that they are young men, a lot of young men. When you talk about rape, you see men. When you talk about all sorts of social vices, you see men. Are these gaps you mentioned, are they contributing factors to all these social vices, risk behaviors we know, witness in this society today?
So definitely, I think anyone who talks to me for a long time will know that one of the things I'm always talking about is how the family is and social studies, teaches us that the family is the smallest unit of the society.
That's right.
So want to know the family, any family is just a reflection of the larger society, or the larger society is a reflection of majority of the family.
That's right.
Constitutes that society. So
That's right.
definitely all these gaps and all these things that have been mentioned previously they have a huge factor as to all the social vices and misconduct that we're seeing in our society now. Definitely,
Mm.
because it starts
Wow.
from home. It starts from the home, and most of all these things I have mentioned is it really starts from the home.
Okay, so maybe I should ask like this: that how do they manifest themselves in our day-to-day lives? How do emotional management gap, the fathering gap, the how-to gap? How do they manifest them? How can we just say that this is lacking in this man? The reason
So,
this person is behaving this way is because of this gap.
I started from that the lack of fatherhood. We don't by
Mm,
lack that essential fatherhood in our families now. And
mm,
so what happens is when you grow up in a family that your basic needs as an emotional being, as you know as a human being is
mm,
neglected.
mm,
So when you grow up in an abusive home, you grow up in a
mm,
place where there has been no father figure. You don't know what direction, because one thing that fathers do is that they provide direction. They show us
mm,
what to do.
mm,
They lead us in the way that we should go. So when
mm.
that's absent in a young man's life, now
Mm,
it doesn't have to be his biological father, but when that
mm,
gap of, let's call it mentoring, when that gap of mentoring of we can call it discipleship as well, do as I
mm,
do. When that gap
mm,
is not there, what
mm,
happens is that such a man will begin his own family again, right?
mm. Yes.
That man build his own family again based on the malfunction of where he's coming from.
Mm,
So if he
mm,
comes from malfunctioning family system,
mm, mm,
ultimately, most likely, he is bound to have a malfunctioning home himself.
mm,
And
mm, mm,
this begins to show up in all sorts when men are not behaving like men. When
mm,
men are behaving like men, they begin to is an abuse of authority.
mm, mm, mm,
When men are not behaving like men, it becomes an abuse of authority. So you see it showing up in homes in abusive tendencies. You see it showing
mm,
up in homes when, a husband, everybody hears the man's voice and everybody is running helter skelter and everybody is afraid. A man should not invoke fear to his family. There should be
mm,
something very comforting about the presence of a father in the house. So this
mm,
starts to show up in that abusive tendencies that most of our African fathers have adopted. And they just feel like, oh, it is something, I don't know that I'm doing anything wrong. For instance, when a man or a father in the house begins to be abusive to his wife or to his
mm,
dads or to his sons,
Mm.
when it comes to, do things like financial abuse,
Mm.
physical abuse, emotional abuse. That is
Mm.
the function of some of those gaps we have mentioned earlier on.
Mm.
There
Mm.
is something missing. There is a vital
Mm.
aspect of his life missing. Someone has not shown that man how to be a good husband. Someone has not shown that man how to
Mm.
be a father.
Mm. 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 That's right. So, Auntie Tolu, because of our time, I have a few thoughts in the chat box here. Someone says, I think men are to be blamed for whatever they are facing in the society. And I think it's not really their fault. It is the way they are configured. What do you think, Auntie Tolu? Just hold on, ma. So another person said, please, is there a role of women in this gap? Like, is there a role women are supposed to play in fixing or filling this gap? Another person says, men behaving like men. Auntie Tolu said, it still boils down uh, to the fact that they put a lot of burden on themselves because they are men. This can't be erased. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts in the chat box, but I want you to talk about what someone said, like what are the roles of women in filling this gap? Do women have any role to play in filling this? And when we talk about women, ma, I don't want you to limit it to wives. I mean women in people's lives. Some people are not married here and perhaps they have women in their lives. What are the roles women can play in filling these gaps?
Okay, so I'm sorry if I don't answer this question in a conventional way. I'm very sorry. Just pardon me.
Okay.
I will start from the I would like call it the foundation. A
Okay.
woman, the role of a woman in setting our men rights is
Okay.
for a woman to know her worth in the first place.
Mm.
For a woman to know who she is, who God has created her to be. You are a
Mm.
mother, you are a nurturing being, right? Firstly.
Mm.
Now, if a woman knows who she is, that she's a mother, that she is pricey, she is very pricey,
Mm. Mm.
you will not join yourself
Mm.
someone who doesn't see you in that light, number one.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
once you join yourself to someone who doesn't see you as, that pricey woman, that valuable woman, that woman of quality that you are, if you join yourself to a man that doesn't see you the way you are,
Mm.
you become the breeding ground,
Mm.
potential ground, because you
Mm.
will have, and it's that same man that will
Mm.
be an example to them. So that's number one. Please,
Mm.
women, let us know who we are and let us not
Mm.
attach ourselves to men
Mm.
who
Mm.
do not value you for who you are, because most
Mm.
likely
Mm.
you your family becomes the breeding ground for everything that we are trying to avoid. That's number one.
Mm.
Number
Mm.
two, as a mother, yes, your husband, ultimately, I'm not ruling that out. Your husband might not be the perfect example,
Okay.
but please let us do our jobs as mothers. We're raising young men. We
Mm.
can tell them the right things to do. We might not know
Mm.
all cases of a man, but what you
Mm.
know, and there are some
Mm.
basics of
Mm.
proper manners,
Mm.
um, of showing them what is good, what is bad, and what is wrong.
Mm. That's right.
Also, the thing of correcting them from a young age.
Mm.
I see that a lot of us women, we like to cut our boys some slack sometimes.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
need to
Mm.
the discipline at that level. Especially in the younger age, has to be top notch. I'm not
That's
saying
all.
this beat him, kill him. I'm not, but our boys need to begin to know what is wrong and what is right, and they need to be punished when they do something that is wrong.
Okay. So, Auntie Tolu, thank you very much. We promised 30 minutes, and I don't want us to extend beyond that. I know there is.
Can I say another thing just before we
oh,
round up? Just before,
all right.
and what I want to say is, for every woman, you are part of the society. If you see a young boy around you going the other way, why don't you
Mm,
take a second look, ask
mm,
questions? And if you know
mm,
a man, that is, in the right path, why don't you be the bridge between,
mm,
so a young man, a young boy that that is going, in another direction, be the bridge between him and a man that can show him in the way that he should go. So that's it's
mm.
also the responsibility of women.
Wow, that's great. So thank you very much for that. I think where you just what you just mentioned now is one of the things we're trying to do, being a bridge. And I know you must have seen Equip, a mentoring program that we're bringing up starting July 11. I know registration is still ongoing, but it is that bridge that we are trying to create for men especially. We want to democratize opportunities for men out there. It's like this gap, men are just growing by default. Any direction is the direction. And when you are on a journey to no direction, anywhere would be your bus stop. So Equip is taking care of being that gap, but it's not limited to men. Women can also be a bridge to link men up with right positive mentors and models out there. No,
Yes.
like I said. So, Auntie Tolu, I cannot thank you enough for this conversation this evening. I believe it's awesome. I mean, there are still a lot of reactions in the chat box that we can't actually take care of this evening, but I believe this conversation continues. To our audience, I just want you to know that this is just the beginning and this is a tip of the iceberg. This conversation continues this week. You'll be notified when next we are having this conversation. This week, certainly, it might be tomorrow. We'll put it in your mailbox. And if we are privileged, we would like to have Auntie Tolu, because I know there's still a lot of things that she would like to say, but because of our time, she will not be able to say it this evening. So I want to say thank you to you, Auntie Tolu, for joining us again. And guys, if you can just unmute your microphone, can you say a big thank you to our guest this evening if you really enjoyed her? Can you unmute your
Thank
microphone
you.
and just a big thank you
Thank
to her?
you. We enjoyed you, ma.
Thank you, Auntie
Ma.
Tolu.
We really enjoy you. Hope to see you again.
Oh, thank you. So I strongly believe by God's grace, we are going to have her back very soon. But thank you everyone for joining this conversation. Please stay tuned, stay close to your mailbox. Certainly, we're going to let you know the next episode and when it is coming. Thank you very much. Everything we've learned this evening, please let's take to them and let us be a bridge to that boy, to that man around us. Thank you. Till I come your way next time. Bye.
Goodbye.